To call this meeting of the Finance Committee to order. The date is the 15th of May. The time is 3 o'clock. With us today, we have Alderwoman Bade, Alderman Bug, two new aldermen, Alderman Larson and Alderman Benuelos. And visiting today is Alderman Nunez. All three of those are new. Congratulations. Thank you. And first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes, 25-0361. Approve the minutes from the Finance Committee meeting held on April 24th, 2025. Do you have a motion?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion by Alderwoman Bade.
Second.
Second by Alderman Bug. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes 5-0. Madam Clerk, anybody from the public wishing to speak?
We do not.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is 25-0292, an ordinance amending the annual budget for the fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2024, and ending December 31st, 2024, amendment number 3 for fiscal year 2024.
Good afternoon, Stacy Peterson, Director of Financial Operations. Today what you have in front of you is the third and final budget amendment for 2024. Every year we bring the final budget amendment as a formalization process through the budget and audit for 2024. The exhibit that is attached is numbered numerically. Revenues are at the front part of it, and about page 3 is where the expenditures start. The memo references the line items that pertain to that particular item. So for example, like the grant for the police department, it's item number 1 for the corresponding revenue and item number 26 for the corresponding expenditure. So that's how the memo is laid out for those of you seeing this for the first time. So then I will briefly go over a couple of the items. Basically, we have items 2 and 72 was formalizing the fund for the transformation fund. Then we have item 4 and 63, which is taking funds from the TIF 3 and repaying gaming tax, because over the time of the TIF, gaming had subsidized some of the payments for some of the debt service for that particular TIF, and that TIF is now closed.
Stacy,
Yes,
what TIF is that?
TIF 3.
Yeah, what location?
It's the River City TIF, which is over off of River Street, where the right across from the library in that area.
Okay, so just give me an example of one expenditure that's paid out of that TIF 3 that the gaming has to front it.
It was the debt service for the obligations for that TIF.
Okay.
Let's see. In item 6, 51 through 61 is the general obligation bonds that we issued in 2024 for the TIF District 17, which is Farnsworth-Bilter, which relates to the casino. Then items 764 relate to the TIF obligations for Belle Gale, and this is just increasing the offsetting revenue and expenditures. That particular project receives a percentage of the revenue that the city receives from that TIF. Similar situation for TIF 7, which is the Midatoyu, and also the next set of items for the premium Chicago Premium Outlet Mall. Item 10, 36, and 68 relate to the DAC development. Then items 12, 87 through 92, we were originally going to issue bonds in 2024. We did not get the opportunity to do that at the end of the year. Therefore, this is just eliminating the budgetary provisions for that particular bond, which was originally budgeted for 2024. Then there are several items that relate to economic development agreements that were passed previously. You will notice that that's item 22 for La Quinta de los Reyes. Item number 23 is for the restaurants in the Hobb building. Then we have a couple of items that relate to operations for the fire department. We're adjusting the budget for overtime for the sworn officers. Overtime costs were greater than expected. Same for the police department. That's item number 25.
Okay, I got a question about those two anyway, so as you're looking. 24 and 25. Do you have historical numbers on how much overtime we did last year for the fire department and the police department? How much we went over?
For 2024?
Well, comparison, so this is 2024, we're adjusting.
Right, so you want to look at 2023?
Yeah.
I can pull that information and provide that to you.
Yeah, we just want to look at a comparative number for those two so we can see a trend.
Okay. You want that both for fire and police?
Please.
Okay. Then we have a couple items related to the ARPA fund. Again, that's item 70 that relates to the provisions that were given to ACA for financial assistance, 4.5 million for the financial assistance, and then a little over 1.2 for the Riverwalk Promenade. We also reallocated the body cameras for the police department to ARPA. That's item 71. Item 73 to 80 is elimination of the budgetary provision for the 2022 GO bond. We had closed that bond, and so some of the items that were budgeted, we reallocated to the 2023 GO bond. We also have a couple items related to the insurance claims for property and casualty, which were higher than expected, and that's 96 to 102. The health insurance cost also for employees was higher than expected, and that's related to item 103 to 106. We had final pay, which is our employee compensation benefits fund. Those costs were higher than expected, and that and then items 108 to 109 relates to retiree health insurance. Those items were also higher than expected based on the budget.
So I have a couple questions.
Yep.
First one about the ARPA funds.
Yep.
Where are we at with that overall? Is everything allocated?
Everything is allocated, everything's been earmarked. We have spent all but a few million. I don't have
Okay,
that number
sure,
off the top of my head, but
ballpark.
we do anticipate that, I believe by the end of the second quarter, we will have expended, it may be the third quarter, we will have expended everything. We have accounted for all of the money that we have received. We have committed it to various expenditures in accordance with the guidelines, and we will have it expended no later than the end of the third quarter this year.
Okay, and we had till the end of the year to allocate that, right?
We
was it end of
actually,
last year?
it was the end of
Previous
last year
year.
to allocate, and then I believe there are 2 more years in which to expend it. I believe it
Okay,
has to be expended
Sure.
by the end of '26. We will have it all expended by the end of '25.
Okay. And then the other question I have, which piggybacks Alderman Buggs, is request for what the overtime was for police and fire. I guess our hope was to, as we got more police and firemen, that we'd have less overtime need. So can you also get us what the staffing levels were? Because I just want to make sure that we're going to hire more. Hopefully, we don't have to have them work as much overtime and put stress on them. And so I'm hoping it goes down as we get more people. You know, that kind of equation type of thing.
Yep,
So if we can
I
get
can do
that
that.
too, it'd be great.
Mhm.
Anybody else have any questions on the
And
council?
I would also point out, Alderman, that we do have a pretty long lead time in terms of getting a police officer in particular up and onto the street.
Sure.
By the time
Yeah.
we have to get them through the academy, if we're not talking about a lateral hire, typically there's a period of time that the police officer needs to study and learn, and
Right.
then before they're able to actually take a position on the
Right.
street in accordance with the officers that are
Right.
retiring, et cetera.
Well, that makes sense. So then I guess if we could break it down even more, who was actually eligible to work? Because I know if you're in training, you wouldn't get your overtime. So I guess we'd look at the numbers, actually, people who could work, as opposed to people who are on the roster, but they're not eligible because they're not certified yet. So that would be great too. I'm just trying to make that comparison, because we really wanted to get the overtime down, and hopefully we'll hire enough people, it brings it down somewhat. Yeah, that's the goal. Okay.
Okay, so you only want 2023.
Yeah, that's
Compared to
fine.
21.
We just need a year or
Okay.
two comparison, that's fine.
Okay.
And Alderman Bay, did you say you had a question?
No.
Okay, I'm sorry. Alderman Bug?
Yeah, I got a couple. Also in 1719, Employee Health Insurance Fund, cost higher than we expected, $3 million. Do we have a comparison of that for the past? Have we been over in the past and we just didn't shoot high enough in our budget number? Or did we just have a lot of claims?
A little bit of both. We've seen some. We're self-insured for a large portion of claims, and then we have excess stop loss insurance on the remainder. We've seen increases both in the premium costs for some of those excess coverages, as well as within the claims, and that's why I came up to the dais. I wanted to, or to the lectern. I wanted to let everybody know that as part of the 2026 budget process, we're going to take a look at both the health claims and the risk claims to make sure that we're allocating them correctly, that we're budgeting them correctly, and that we have a good handle on the trends. It's been a while since we've taken a comprehensive look at them in terms of how we actually budget and charge the departments for them. So we're going to make sure that we get that done and that we have an adequate resource line to be able to pay those claims and premiums as they come in.
Okay. And my last question was not something on this sheet, but something that we did financially this year and got held up. So, of course, we paid the federal government $1 million to do our special census. The money's sitting in the federal government's coffers. Is there a time frame where we would ask for that back? So it can sit in our bank account instead of their bank account? Or we just gonna let it sit there and hope that we move forward?
Well, right now, I think the program is somewhat in limbo, and that was done at the behest of the Census Bureau, not through any efforts that the city
Oh,
undertook.
of course.
Because we would like to have that count redone, as we've discussed at length, but maybe for the benefit of some of the new aldermen. We are losing about $4 million a year because of the undercount in the city's population. So I believe at this point, there's an evaluation of options that is going on right now to determine what the best course of action is going to be forward. Sure.
Hi all, Shannon Cameron, Chief of Staff. So with the census, it is true that the federal government is holding our $1 million. We did spend money out of that to ramp up when we thought that was going to happen, until the federal government put the pause on that. If we ask for our money back, which we can do, we lose our spot in line if they relaunch, which could put us, as you realize, after 2020, we got our numbers back. We immediately went into action, so says the last administration, when I met with them, to get a recount done. It was immediate. So it took this long for it to happen. So if we lose our spot in line, that means we might have years before we can get it done. And then we're to the next census, possibly. So that is a choice, that we can talk more about, but we would lose that spot, is what I understand. Thanks.
Well, I got a couple questions.
Yeah,
So, I don't know
right,
how
you
familiar
first.
you are with that. So we don't get our money back, what we lost. But since we put it in at a certain time, and they're kind of, and I'm gonna be very frank about it, they're screwing up. They're screwing this whole thing up. Once we gave them that money and we find the census good, are we gonna get at least that back from that time? So if we put it in 6 months ago, could we get that 6 months back because it's on them now,
Yeah, can we get that retroactive payment?
That portion, since once we put it in, we know we can't get it back for the years prior, but since we put it in, I'm just wondering if we get that
It's a
back.
great question. I will check into that.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm unsure at this time. I will say it's in, the Department of Commerce where the tariffs are, so that department is tied up in certain things, as you may imagine, but great question, Alderman. I will check in. Chairman?
Alderman
Yeah,
Benji.
right.
Alderman, if you're talking about the revenue that we're losing in terms of the state of Illinois, that, as I understand it, cannot be done retroactively. So in other words, they simply go from whenever the population is certified by the Census Bureau. It's filed with I believe it's the Secretary of State's office down at the state. Then that next month that they do the disbursements is when they actually start allocating based on the new population. So my understanding is there's no provision or ability to get anything retroactively until there's a population number that's certified.
Well, we knew that, but what we didn't know is they were gonna be so incompetent at the federal level that once we give them our money, that should kind of be where, with the normal process, I mean, that's my opinion on that why are we also taking a hit for their incompetence? It's really what I'm thinking. I understand how it went originally, if you lose 3 years, but in year 3.5, I give you $1 million, that clock should be running on us. So that's why I'm separating the two of them. But I just want to know, and maybe we don't have an answer for that. I just didn't know if we did because, at a certain point in time, I mean, how much could we expect to be responsible for? All this kind of nonsense that's going on. So that's why I asked that.
Yeah,
Okay.
we would, however, be able to theoretically anyway, be able to recover any of the $1 million deposit that we put down
right. I
for
knew that.
expenditures
Okay.
that has not been expended.
Okay.
But I don't believe we have the ability to retroactively reclaim revenue loss.
Okay, all right, thank you. Alderman Buggs,
Yeah.
you have a question?
Historically, Mr. Minnick, you are correct. I was involved in a special census a very long time ago in New Lenox, and that's the way it's handled. That's why you try to do them so quickly, so you can certify the number and
Yes.
start getting the money. Yeah, I'll let it go. That's all right.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions on this ordinance? Hearing none, do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion by Alderwoman Bade. We have a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Larson. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? And that passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next item on the agenda is 25-0258, a resolution to award a contract to Builders Paving LLC in the amount of $5,873,168, and to appropriate $3.5 million of MFT funds for the 2025 citywide street resurfacing East project.
Good afternoon, Tim Widener with the Engineering Division. So this is one of 2 resurfacing projects we're doing this year. The first one was just awarded by City Council and is being undertaken by Geneva Construction. And the second one will be Builders Paving. So Exhibit A is the bid tab. They were about 2% under our estimates, so we're happy with the numbers. Builders last did our project in 2022. So the street list is Exhibit B, and then Exhibit C is just our standard IDOT resolution we need to pass in order to use the MFT funds. So I'd be happy to answer any questions on the program.
Questions or comments?
Yeah.
Alderman Bug.
Thank you for this. Of course, our residents always looking forward to moving forward. They need their streets done or their areas. So thank you. I am kind of forced to ask a question because of information we found out over the last few months. And it is just a general question for engineering and for the city. To your knowledge, are any employees of the engineering department or city employees employed by Builders Paving or any of them owners of Builders Paving that you know of?
No.
Or Geneva Construction, any employees of engineering or the city, owners or employees of Geneva Construction?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Okay, thank you very much.
And for the new alderman, I don't know if you guys know how this works, but typically that money is split per ward, you know, anywhere from $600,000 to $1 million, depending on the streets. And correct me if I'm wrong, we do an independent audit every 5 years.
Approximately, it gives or takes.
Right.
We actually just approved a, no, it's another word for it. It's like a pavement evaluation.
Right.
So we have an independent company basically drive every street, and they come up with what's called a pavement condition index, or PCI, and then we use that data to help manage our program. So we actually just passed a contract for that. They'll be driving the streets, you know, probably June, July-ish. We don't have a date yet, but then we'll use that for 2026 and moving forward to help with our road selection.
Right. So when your constituents call you and say, my street is, I'm just gonna give you a piece of advice, when streets are really bad, say, it's an independent audit, there's a list, if your street is bad and you're not on the list, that means there's a number worse, a number of them worse. So that's kinda how that goes. We don't decide it, you don't decide it, an auditor decides it, we come up with the list, and then we kinda go by the list every year with the worst ones. So, I mean, because you're gonna get that a lot, so I just wanna let you know that we don't audit it, but we take the list and we just go from the worst. And it's always relative to somebody else's street, that's how that works, so I just wanna throw that out there.
And Carl, that's a good point. Mr. Jacobs can send you the last list, which came over, we didn't come February, March? Yeah, the last rating list. So
It's
you
on here
have
now,
it.
I mean,
Hmm?
yeah, the list is on here too, so,
Oh, the rating list?
yeah,
Oh, I
the
didn't know.
new one is on there, so, yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah, so. But you have other ways to find that stuff out, so I just wanna let you know, okay. You have
Just a quick question, and this auditor does the whole city, right? Not just certain parts of the city, they drive around the whole city?
Correct, yes. Every street that we
No,
maintain.
I'm talking about the
So, yeah.
rating.
And yeah, since you weren't on the council when we did that, a couple extra things we're doing this year is
I see,
also we're
right.
getting a sign inventory. So they're gonna be driving and doing some GIS asset collection, and our streets department will take that and kind of build their street sign inventory. So just added benefit.
Any other questions or comments on this one? Hearing none, do we have a motion?
So moved.
We
Motion.
have a motion by Alderman Bug, second by Alderwoman Bade. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that passes 5-0. Thank you. Next item is 25-0359, a resolution authorizing the purchase of one replacement Ford hybrid utility police interceptor from Curry Motors for $52,488.
Good afternoon, Chris Linville, Superintendent of Fleet Operations. I'm requesting the use of property claims fund to replace a wrecked squad car. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Questions or comments on this? The only comment I would make is that in the legislative text, it doesn't really have what we're doing. It doesn't talk about that. It's kind of like missing it. So it needs to, the resolution needs to go into legislative text. It's just kind of a cleaning up of the process. That's all that is.
Yeah, just a number.
Right. No questions or comments?
No.
Yeah, one question.
Sure.
Do you know how much insurance-wise we got for the
So there was a
2020?
there was
Yeah.
a settlement of $17,692.
Wow. Okay. Little bit of depreciation, huh? Okay.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Hearing none, do we have a
Motion to
motion?
approve.
We have a motion by Alderwoman Bade, second by,
Second.
second by Alderman Veneros. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? And that passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item is 25-0378, a resolution authorizing Director of Purchasing to enter into a purchase agreement with 5-8 Group for the procurement of a drive test scanner for the Aurora Police Department, a total amount not to exceed $170,000.
Good afternoon, Chairman. Good afternoon, Finance Committee. Lieutenant Bill Rowley, I'm the Aurora Police Department's Administrative Services Lieutenant. You have before you a request to allow the purchasing director to enter into an agreement with 5-8 Group for a drive test scanner. So if I could, I'll take a few minutes to explain what that is and what our general purpose is. A lot of this is proprietary and or sensitive information related to ongoing criminal investigations, so I may have to be somewhat guarded with some of that information that's not suitable for regular public consumption. But in essence, when we have something like a wanted fugitive or a missing and endangered person or some other critical time relevant incident, one thing that the Aurora Police Department has learned, and many police departments across the nation has learned, that cell phone data is a very valuable piece of data that we can use to locate wanted fugitives. We can either prove or disprove someone's presence at or near a crime scene, and we can also use this technology to track down people who have wandered away from nursing homes or caregivers, children that have gone if they have a cell phone with them, things like that. We currently have a piece of software we call Trax. Trax allows us to sort of single in on cell phone location, geolocations based on cell phone tower signals. That's a very rudimentary, by comparison, a fairly rudimentary technology. In other words, if Trax were used to look at where I'm standing here based on the cell phone in my pocket, it would ping to the nearest tower and tell the police department that I'm within maybe a mile or two or a couple of miles of that cell phone tower. In an incident that requires an urgent response or a critical response, a mile or two in police terms is a fairly wide berth. This software, this is actually a piece of hardware that we can bring out to a crime scene or we can use in real time that gives us a very, very precise location of where that cell phone is. It also allows us to do other regular analysis of the cell phone network here in the city. This originated as a device that was used by cell phone carrier services and their engineers as a way to further enhance cell phone tower coverage areas and create a greater pinpoint of the service gaps and things like that. For the law enforcement application, we can use this not only to see where someone is if we're looking for someone who's missing or someone who is a wanted fugitive, but we can also use this to rule people out. This is great for one of those whodunit type, let's say for instance a murder where we have just no other information. We can rule folks out as suspects based on their lack of presence via the cell phone network. Typically, if we don't have a technology like this available to us, our only other recourse is to ask the cell phone companies to provide information. This also, by the way, also requires a later subpoena, search warrant, other legal documents that would require us to follow a certain legal process to obtain evidence that could be usable in court. This is meant for the here and now when we're in a crisis and we're trying to find someone quickly before they're further endangered or before they escape prosecution, things like that. Cell phone data is, absent any other eyewitness data, it's our #1 source of data in most investigations. So when we use this information, we can gather all the tools that we need to make a presentation to a judge for a search warrant, or we can make presentations to cell phone carriers with a subpoena to obtain further records. What this also does, this drive test scanner does, is it's a verification tool for the software that we already have in place. As with most things that are involving evidence, the judicial system requires, and in some cases demands, that we be able to verify as a secondary source evidence that we obtain that's not, for instance, I would use the example of, say, blood evidence from a crime scene. We can take that blood evidence, but that blood evidence would have to be verified through a crime lab, or drug evidence would have to be verified through a drug lab and things like that. Digital evidence is no different. We can obtain that evidence on the spot, but it has to be later verified through a process, and we have to have expert witnesses that can testify. We have a resource available to us that can do this as an outsourced, subcontracted employee, for instance. That person charges about $8,000 per incident, and the wait time is usually 5 to 6 months before we can get any type of usable data back. Now, if you think about a missing and endangered person, 5 or 6 months is certainly an unconscionable amount of time. in terms of a wanted fugitive or a crime scene that's ongoing and developing. The old adage of the first 48 hours is more or less a true measure of how rapidly we can obtain evidence and therefore make an arrest or locate a person that's wanted, or, quite frankly, to discard someone who we shouldn't be looking at as a suspect so closely. So I'm free to answer any questions you might have as long as I can.
So Lieutenant, we're purchasing this, right?
Yes, our plan is to purchase this using asset forfeiture funding, drug funds.
So is there like a warranty with this, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it comes with a warranty. It also comes with a period of training and certification.
Okay.
So the folks that would be using this, members of the Aurora Police Department, would be certified to the point where they would be able to testify in court. Any warranty failures or anything like that would be handled as part of the service agreement with the contract.
Do we know how long, I guess this technology, you never know how long it's supposed to last before it either becomes obsolete or you gotta get a new one or anything like that? Do we?
That's a question I don't have
Yeah,
an answer.
sometimes you just don't know because everything's
Right.
relatively new. There's no historical perspective on it,
Correct.
but, okay.
That's
All right.
correct.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Alderman Buck?
It really looks, I mean, like it is a great tool. How often, if you could say,
Sure.
do we use it daily, weekly, monthly?
Well, this isn't a service that we currently have or a piece of equipment
Right.
that we currently have, so
Or
current use data we
other
don't have.
departments?
Other departments, if I could just refer to my notes for just a moment. I believe the Joliet Police Department has this piece of equipment.
Okay.
I know that we did an assessment based on the number of cases we would see annually, and I don't want to misspeak, so if you permit me just a moment to see if I can obtain that data. I have so much paperwork here to sort through. Thank you for your patience. In front of me, I don't have an actual number of cases where cell phone data was used for either a missing person or an active investigation. I had a conversation with the lieutenant who's in charge of investigations, and he is the person who will oversee the staff members that will use this. And we had just an informal conversation where he mentioned that we have hundreds of cases where this piece of hardware would be applicable, and the conversation was at $8,000 per use, we're into the millions per year if we were to pay someone outside the organization to
Right,
do
to
this.
do it.
So using that loose number, it may be difficult to go through our case history and see which ones had a direct nexus to cell phone evidence. But certainly, he also brought to my mind cases where we have used cell phone geolocation data, not only to find missing persons, but also most specifically to rule out someone who we were looking at as a suspect, but the cell phone data refuted that and put us on the right path. And I can think of at least two that he and I spoke about, just informally.
Okay, thank you. And this is a sole source, so.
It's a sole source.
Alderwoman Bay, go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. All the officers will have training for this, how to use this tool?
It's not for every officer. There's a very specific training curriculum that goes along with this piece of hardware. We have an investigator assigned to our Bureau of our General Assignment Investigations. That investigator will be the primary person who'll be trained on this and trained up to the level where he would be able to testify in court as an expert. There is a plan to have a second person also trained in this, but this would be relegated almost exclusively to our investigations. So we wouldn't have a patrol officer, for instance, or an evidence technician employing this technology. It would be very specific. We do have a succession plan in place so that when those folks leave, we'll be able to train up people. They'll be able to train up people after them, and we can reach out to the 5-8 group and make sure that those folks are also certified.
So approximately how many people will be trained?
At least one to start.
Just one will
with
be
a-
enough for the whole city?
He's a busy detective. If we had the staffing to support a half a dozen folks on this, we would certainly probably want to do that. But right now, and this person, by the way, is a person who only focuses on cell phone data and geolocation.
Okay.
He doesn't carry a caseload per se, so his duties are almost exclusively to this, and he's come out on weekends in the middle of the night and other things for cell phone geolocation stuff.
Okay, thank you.
One last comment. We always like to have pictures, so for the committee of the whole meeting, can you take a picture of that and throw it into the package?
If I can find a picture of it, or if they will provide a picture of
You
it to
can even
me,
draw one with a crayon and take a picture of that, just as long as we have it, know what it looks
Alderman
like.
Franco, I'd be glad to do whatever you
I
ask.
appreciate that. Thank you so much. Any other comments?
Yeah.
Motion to.
I'm sorry.
Oh, you got it.
Alderman Nunez.
Just one question. I see that 3 years of software updates are included in the estimate. I also see that at the end of those 3 years, depending on the equipment, again, as we talked about, whether or not it's obsolete, what does a 3 or 5 year quote look like following those initial 3 years? Did they share that at all?
We don't have information on what happens after that 3 years.
Okay.
Our plan would be to continue the service, so long as it's a profitable and justifiable expense. If at the end of 3 years, perhaps something more efficient or even less expensive comes along as technology develops, we are always amenable to looking at sort of what's the best thing out there for the community. And I think our plan is probably to continue to use drug funds to support this for as long as we're able to.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Yeah,
Alderman-
and just,
Alderman Bud, go
just for
ahead.
reference,
Sure.
this is a sole source, so you don't have comparatives here. There are other companies, certain things that the police dealing with, we go through special contracts and we have a sole provider. So they're, for now, they're it. So in 5 years, there could be 10 people, bidding, but right now it's a sole source.
Well said.
I guess one question on that. Is this a sole source because this is like a newer form of technology, or are there other sources that we expect to exist in the future, or is this just like a new thing?
Well, part of this is that the technology in a law enforcement application is new. I mean, there are probably other similar products that cell phone companies would use as their cell phone engineers would need it, but those products don't meet the same criteria that a law enforcement agency would, the courts would need to see, verifiability, things like that. So as it sits here today, they've identified themselves as the sole provider, the sole source of this specific equipment with all the specifications that are needed for law enforcement. I'm thoroughly unable to predict the future, but I would suggest that just like the iPhone, it didn't take too long for other smartphones to appear. And if this is a technology that is worthwhile for the nation, for national finding missing persons, locating, watching fugitives, I'm certain that another company will come along and try to, enjoy the competitive process of our. So,
Okay.
For now, the sole source indicates that they're the only game in town.
Yeah, just a new use case for this technology that
Yes.
has existed for other purposes. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions or comments?
So moved to approve.
We have a motion by Alderman Bugg, second by Alderwoman Bade. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you, Lieutenant.
Thank you, committee.
Next item on the agenda is 25-0393, a resolution approving the IDOT low bid award for construction for the North Aurora underpass at the CN Railroad.
Good afternoon, Tim Widener, Engineering Division. So this is one of our federally funded projects that's on an IDOT letting. We do a lot of these, and normally we don't come back to you at this time, but due to the nature of how high the bids were, it necessitates us to get some council action on this. So a quick recap of the project. There's 3 entities involved: Aurora, Naperville Township. Naperville's taking the lead, and they're passing a similar resolution at their city council meeting next week. We thought we were done with this project when we passed our last amendment to the IGA that kind of did the final, what we thought would be the final construction engineering costs in like the last phase of the project. So at that time, we thought our share would be about $3.1 million. That's what city council approved. That money is also MFT funds, and it was spread out on a payment plan with Naperville. So good news is, despite the high bids and the bids being about $8 million over, it's very likely that we're going to get additional federal funding and state funding on this. We just don't know how much, timing, et cetera. So this is kind of like our worst case scenario, if you will. So the worst case scenario would be that our local share would be 3.1 million. It would be increased up to 6.9 million. So that's kind of what we had to prepare for. It is possible actually our local share would go down from the 3.1 we approved. We don't know at this time. So that's kind of what we're recommending. And Naperville is also amenable to kind of keeping our our payment plan we have set up, and any future payments, if it did go over that 3.1, basically extended out into the future. So I know this is the first time a couple of years seeing this project, so I could dive into more details if you want, but I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Alderman Larson, go ahead.
Yeah, I have one question. This bid is higher than we expected. Do we know why? Are there issues with tariffs or something?
Not that we're aware of. Unfortunately, since IDOT is the bidding agency and the contracting agency, their central office in Springfield keeps things very tight to the vest. We don't even see a bid tab. The best we could get is a list of pay items and a range of how high or under they were on. So we kind of know what was higher. Rebidding is an option, but we would recommend against that. Number one, there's not really anything we can change. There's not really any bells and whistles, and it's kind of like a bare bones project. And we don't do a lot of high-end value projects like this, so it's a little bit out of our expertise, but just from talking to others, relying on the Naperville engineer or the consultant, basically rebidding, it's going to come in higher. So yeah, we're not sure. And the bids, there were, I think, 5 bidders, and they were all relatively close. And so that's kind of indicative also that, this is the scope and this is how much it truly costs.
Okay, thanks.
Alderman Benillis, did you have a question about that one?
I did. I had a question regarding the unanticipated cost for the $7,400,000. I just wanted to know where that number came from.
I'm sorry, which number is that?
It's on page 3, I believe. It says $7,400,000 of unanticipated costs.
Oh, the actual resolution?
Yeah.
So I think that was the rounded difference of like the low bid and the engineer's estimate. So the engineer's estimate was like 25 million or so, high 25 million.
And you're Alderman Bade? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say overall with like this last phase, it's about $52 million once you factor in the construction. There's construction engineering, there's railroad force account items, there's a bunch of utility relocation that needs to happen, a multi-million-dollar gas line, multi-million-dollar ComEd line. So all that is federally funded. So right now we have $40 million of federal and state funds lined up, and with a very likely chance to get more additional. So
Can you just remind us what the percentage is? Us versus Naperville versus, it's a township, right?
correct. So maybe a little bit of background. This is in our boundary agreement with Naperville. Last one passed in 2014. And essentially there, I think it said that this would be split 50-50 between Naperville and Aurora. So Naperville Township's, I think, been a little bit of an unexpected partner. To date, between the three entities, we've spent about $6.5 million together, and that's been about a third. So Aurora's share so far has been about $2.2 million. Now moving into these next phases, Naperville Township's a very small percentage. They're under $1 million, and it's up to Aurora and Naperville to split that remaining local share. But again, I think probably at the time of the boundary agreement wasn't expected, so it's been, they've been a good partner.
Alderman Bay?
Do we have a completion date for this? It's been a really long project. It's taken long time, and our patch is much smaller than the Naperville side.
Correct.
But any estimated completion
Uh,
day or year?
It's a very complicated project. It is a working day contract, so there isn't like a set completion date. So this all depends on kind of the stars aligning and assuming that we pass and this gets awarded. There will be a 1 to 2 month detour because they're going to construct like a shoe fly bridge, and that's also going to time up. That'll probably be in the spring. By the time things get moving, and the large gas line also needs to be lowered, and then they kind of need to dig out the underpass and build a pump station. So I think that's lining up to be the spring. Overall, it's a 2+ construction season project, so we're probably looking at 2028 by the time this is done. I could probably say end of 2027 is like a good time frame, but there's probably going to be a delay. There'll probably be issues, so I'd say 28.
You mentioned shoe fly bridge.
It's basically a temporary bridge that they.
Where will that be?
It's on the east side of the current bridge is where the temporary bridge is going.
So if people are coming from Eola, the bridge will be over the train track, or where will it, like, I didn't understand.
It's a temporary railroad bridge, so basically
Temporary railroad, okay.
Correct, yeah.
Okay, got it.
Because, the railroad can't shut down their train traffic,
Yes.
so they, and it'll be built in stages and what have you, so I think that initial detour is, they could do work and build the abutments outside the right of way, but at some point they need to shut down the road so they could actually erect the bridge.
And how much say do we have about the underbridge? Because that area gets flooded every now and then if there is heavy rains. So can we tell them to raise the ground or no?
Well, if anything, I believe the ground's getting lower, but we're building a new pump station
Okay.
and upsize it to handle that. So
That'll be good.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion by Alderwoman Bay, second by Alderman Bug. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 5-0. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Last item on the agenda, 25-0419 will be held. A little bit more research and investigation needs to go on to the, when this was authored and how it was done, so we'll be looking at that at the next Finance Committee meeting. With that said, is there anything else come before the
Motion to
Finance
adjourn.
Committee today? Hearing none, Alderwoman has a motion to adjourn. We have a second by
Motion second.
Alderman Benellis. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And we are adjourned at 3:48. Thank you.
Thank you.